We alluded to in the beginning of the night that we had some special awards that we wanted to give out tonight. So I want to talk about the folks that are being honored here tonight that really keep this vital organization moving. So let's talk about our honoree for a second. She is passionate about social justice issues. She walked into GOSO's office, which I thought was pretty impressive, 2 years ago, and was astonished by the organization. She made, right there on the spot, a generous donation to GOSO. She was a fierce, and always has been, a fierce advocate for change and reform, and even attends Rikers on a yearly basis to volunteer. So for her contributions for positive changes in the criminal justice system, tonight we honor a very special woman by the name of Wendy Neu. Give her a round of applause. But before we invite her up here, I want to invite Mark Goldsmith back to the stage to say a few words about her. Mark.
Wendy, the people are lined up from Washington to New York. It's going to be tough to fit them all in, but we're going to. When Charlie Kushner called me and told me that you had agreed to be honored, I was blown away. Because when you walked into our offices over 2 years ago for the first time, the moment you arrived, I knew you got it. You understood what were you dealing with in this country, where we are 3% of the world's population. Guess what? We incarcerate 25% of the people in this world. Got to change. Now, that's who Wendy is. She doesn't just talk, she delivers. She doesn't just suggest that formerly incarcerated men should be hired to give them a second chance. She hires them in her company, and some of them are with us tonight. Hear, hear. I could go on and on. However, there are a few far more articulate people than I am who want to honor her tonight. Unfortunately, there were 10 serious calls on the Senate floor this afternoon, starting at 3 o'clock, so that, unfortunately, Senator Booker could not be with us. But he is going to talk to us shortly over a video. But let me tell you a story about Cory Booker and how he gets it. Charlie, how many years ago? 5, 6 years ago? Charlie brought the then Mayor Booker to Rikers Island. Gloria, I'm sure you remember the day. So he came into a classroom and he started to talk to these young men about what it meant to be successful. And he asked them what they wanted to do. And one young man said he wanted to be a boxer. And the senator looked at him and then Mayor said, "How many push-ups can you do, kid?" Kid said 50. Cory said, "Let me see it." He did 50. Cory said, "Excuse me." Takes off his jacket and gives him 100 right in the classroom. The kids looked at him and he says, "Mayor Booker, I can do better." He gives him 125. And Senator, then Mayor, looked at him and said, "You see that, kid? Don't underestimate what you can do." So he's been to Rikers, he knows GOSO, he's been in the classroom, and now he'd like to tell you a little bit more, unfortunately by video, but he cut this just this afternoon when he realized he couldn't make it.
Hi, I'm Cory Booker, and I'm so proud to be able to say a few words about one of the more extraordinary friends that I have, Wendy Neu. Wendy Neu has been involved with GOSO, and I'm proud of that work and proud of the work that GOSO is doing. These two combinations, a force like Wendy and the incredible work that the GOSO team is doing, really is something to celebrate. I celebrate Wendy because I've known her for years, and truly, she is all about second chances. In fact, ideals and values of redemption, of every person having worth and values and ability to contribute no matter what their background. This is what makes Wendy Neu so extraordinary, and this isn't a new thing for her. From her times working as a social worker in Trenton State Prison, she has been on the front lines of trying to make real the ideals of this country: liberty and justice for all, equal justice under the law. I'm inspired by her and grateful for her work. Her and John together as a partnership, when I met them, were involved with Bard University, doing some incredible things in helping people come home. I'm also grateful that one of the great experiences I had when Charlie Kushner, another one of my extraordinary friends who is irrationally committed to ideals of justice, that going out to Rikers Island and seeing more of the work and being really inspired by them about my work in Newark as mayor and now my work in the Senate. That's what real friends are about, elevating you in the larger cause of our country and the larger cause of humanity. I want to thank you for celebrating her. I want to thank you for honoring her for the work that she's done. The beauty of all this is God ain't finished with her yet. We all have work to do to fix this broken criminal justice system. That's why we must support organizations like GOSO and continue to partner with people like a Charlie Kushner, like a Wendy Neu, and the other champions that are there tonight, because together we can create true change and make our nation live up to its highest principles. We can be a light to all people, whether they've stumbled and fallen, whether they've suffered mental health challenges or addictions. All people in our country can get that spirit, that light, that hope of America. That's our purpose. Thank you all for being a part of that, and thank you tonight for honoring my friend and truly an extraordinary soul, Wendy Neu.
When I took a look at Wendy's guest list, I said, wow, is he coming tonight? I said, he's not only coming tonight, but should Senator Booker get caught, and it turns out he would like to say a few words. So from the legendary family of former President John F. Kennedy, I'd like you to introduce Robert Kennedy Jr.
Thank you very much. And I promised Wendy I wouldn't talk long, but one of the first times that I met Wendy was up at her, and excuse my voice, please, was up at the recycling facility up at Mount Vernon, and she introduced me to the manager of the facility who had been in prison and was now earning a very high salary and was, it was just a template for somebody who was given a chance and by people who were ready to believe and made something extraordinary of his life, and he's still there today. And I shared at that time that 20 years ago, I had hired somebody for my organization, for Riverkeeper, who was on work release after serving 5 years in a federal penitentiary. And it was a very controversial decision at that point because we are a law enforcement organization. We enforce environmental laws, and this person had broken some environmental laws. And, but I just left work a few minutes ago and before coming down here, and he was sitting in his office, which is right next to mine, where he's been sitting for the last 20 years. He's become an extraordinary advocate, one of the most reliable and trusted members of our organization. It was because some people were willing to take a chance. And I think what you're doing, putting this organization together, and of course Wendy is part of everything that's good that's happening everywhere. Corey talked about the city on a hill and putting a light out, which is what Wendy does. But my father told me when I was young, me and my 10 brothers and sisters, the most important speech that has ever been given in American history was Jonathan Winthrop's speech in 1630, standing on the deck of the sloop Arbella, looking at the New World for the first time with the first wave of Puritans who came over, and pointing to these green, verdant hills and with a richness they'd never seen in Europe, and saying, and it was land that they had fairly bought from the Indians, and he said to them, God is giving us this land, and he's giving it not so that we can disappear into the lure of real estate or increase our carnal opportunities, but rather so we can build a city on a hill, so we can make ourselves a light to all the other nations in the world. And what he said that day, although he was a white man and a Puritan, has been adopted and integrated by every successive wave of immigration that's come to this country. And there's two reasons people come to America. They come here to increase their lot, to increase the size of their piles, and whoever dies with the most stuff wins. Or they come here pursuing some kind of vision of democracy and justice and idealism. And Wendy came here as a little girl, and she came for that reason, for her idealism. And she immediately started causing trouble as soon as she got here. She was arrested protesting the Vietnam War when she was 16 years old as a new immigrant to our country, and she went to prison. And that's where she got the idea that we should be hiring people who have been to prisons. She That's who she is, and she loves justice, she loves democracy. She has also done very well in this country, and she has used her wealth and used her resources and used her life's energy to make this country live up to our ideals, and particularly the idea that we should pass to our children the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as our parents gave us, and even better, and that if we want to achieve that great ideal, we have to resist the seduction of the notion that we can advance ourselves as a people by leaving our poor brothers and sisters behind. She's always on the side of the poor, the most vulnerable people, the most vulnerable animals, anybody who needs help. Wendy is there to help them, and I'm so proud to have you as my friend and my inspiration. Thank you, Wendy Neu.
Wendy, your turn. Well, first we're going to give you the award, and then we'd like to hear a few words.
Okay. Well, I know Senator Cory Booker is not here tonight, but I know he is here in spirit. He has become a real leader in this movement. And I must say, Bobby, you are my worst nightmare, frankly. I've followed you twice now in public speaking, and the first one didn't work out so well. People literally got up, and no one heard my speech, including my mother. She wanted to have a picture with Bobby. So there are so many people that I could thank tonight, but let me start with how this all began. Charlie Kushner, our host, has been a good friend to me since my husband passed away in 2013. Thank you, Charlie and Cyril, for all your support. It was because of our shared interest in prison reform that you introduced me to Mark and his wonderful staff. I am accepting this honor on behalf of GOSO, who work every day to reform our broken criminal justice system, and also on behalf of those who have survived this brutal system and successfully transitioned to life on the outside. I am in awe of you, all of you. My story began with my parents. It's not a particularly unique immigrant story. I was born in Manchester, England, to a mother raised in abject poverty. It was the beginning of World War II, and she was born into a class system that she could never escape. My father, born and raised in India, who upon arriving in England suffered discrimination and was not able to find work. It was our dream to come to America. We firmly believed racial and social differences didn't matter. And arriving in the late 60s, it was largely true for us. They were able to raise and educate 6 children, despite the fact that neither had any formal education, money, or friends. However, they never let us forget our past and where we came from, and how very, very lucky we were. So, as a young person, I was very idealistic and active in the SDS, and I know many of you here probably don't know who that is, but that was the Students for a Democratic Society, a group many of you have not heard of, but we were driven by a desire to change the world, and certain we could achieve it. Like so many of other SDS members, I landed in the DC County Jail for protesting. It was the first time I witnessed both the horrors and the generosity of jail life. By generosity, I mean the inmates gave up their meals, blankets, and welcomed us with open arms. White, middle-class college students. I was 16 at the time and knew then I would work in a prison. After graduation, to my father's dismay, I spent the next 6 years working in maximum and medium security prisons as a social worker. In my early 20s, with no social work experience or education, I was responsible for counseling inmates who had committed serious crimes, many with serious mental health issues, as well as developed parole plans. Crazy, right? Well, the inmates also thought it was crazy. But over time, I earned their respect. Obviously, I was totally unprepared for this job, but I committed my heart and soul to doing whatever I thought could help. I now know I learned more in those 6 years about life and its unfairness, and that the experience shaped much of my life today. I came to see them as human beings, and as the saying goes, but for the grace of God, they could have been my brothers and sisters. People who had overcome terrible childhoods, discrimination, and circumstances beyond their control, and yet somehow they survived as best they could. The two things they had in common: they were poor, and they were mostly minorities. As good as this country had been to my family, clearly those born here had not been given the same opportunities we had been given. I realized then that there was a class system, in some ways perhaps worse than what we had escaped in England. It was far more insidious and invisible because no one talked about it, making it far more difficult to address. Maybe tonight represents a turning point with so many of you in this room. At the age of 27, I was burnt out and traumatized by the stories and the horrors I had witnessed and could do nothing about. I left the prison, but the prison never left me. I'd come to understand that there was a darker side to this country, the same one that I loved and considered had been the salvation for my own family, was systematically destroying lives and families not so different from my own. From then on, I would challenge and question many of the beliefs and values we hold so dearly. Yes, this country is exceptional in many ways, but the American dream exists for fewer and fewer, and my family had been one of the lucky ones. If any of you think I'm being harsh, I strongly suggest you spend a day at Rikers with GOSO. Recently visiting, I was shocked at the conditions and the chaos young people were living in. Remember, these are people who have been arrested but not convicted. Many without the resources to post even the $200 bail, and many suffering from mental issues. So when the opportunity arose for both my late husband, John, and I to provide employment for graduates of the Bard College Prison Initiative, and Max Kenner, you're here tonight, he runs that program, we jumped at the chance. As time went on, my guys brought to us their friends from inside and other people marginalized by our society, who are now working alongside us and now become part of my family. They have paid their dues to society, but still face discrimination in housing and employment. It never ends for them. Over the years, they've become not only my trusted employees, but also my friends, and several are with me tonight. My life has in some ways gone full circle, and I am forever grateful. Again, I accept this award on behalf of all of you who not only work with me and whom I am so proud of, but also my friend, Rudy Valdez, who is with us tonight and whose sister, Cindy, a nonviolent offender, is currently serving 15 years on a mandatory minimum sentence and whose children are without a mother. I weep for her. In conclusion, I would like to close by quoting a parable from Senator Booker's recent book, United, which I highly recommend all of you read. Let me hope I can find it. There was a man walking beside a river. His mind was elsewhere, but he heard a troubling sound and looked into the water. A child was drowning in the river. He dove in to save her. Just as he pulled her to the safety of the riverbank, he turned and saw another child floating down the river. He jumped back in and saved that child. Exhausted, he placed the second child on the riverbank, but even as he did, he saw yet another child. He dove in again. This continued, one helpless child after another, and he summoned all of his physical strength and endurance, diving in again and again. At last, mired in his struggles, he saw another man walking along the river. He desperately called out, "Friend, please, come, jump into the river. Help me save these children." The younger man moved on, accelerating his pace. The man in the river screamed again, "Help me. Get into this water. There are children to save." The younger man kept moving, now sprinting away. Finally, the man in the river screamed at him in anger, "How can you be so cruel? There are children drowning here. Don't be such an evil man. Come help me." Now the younger man did stop. He turned to face the man in the river and yelled at him, "No, I won't come into the water with you. I am going upriver to find out why these children are in the water in the first place so I can stop it." Many of us in this room have been lucky like my family. It is incumbent upon us to accept responsibility because we are all responsible. We can start accepting responsibility by not only opening our minds and hearts, but also by providing financial support to organizations like GOSO, and particularly GOSO. We need to stop these children, our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our fathers, from drowning and ending up in a system from which they cannot ever truly escape. If we don't, who will? They are not statistics. They are us. Thank you.